This video is about how to teach Chapter 9 of our Management for Church Leaders Volume Number 2 training. This chapter is on budgeting, and the purpose of this chapter is to provide a process and an understanding of preparing ministry budgets. Again, you should allow about an hour for this training, making sure to leave time at the end for the exercise. Some of the key points in this chapter we talk about are that budgeting is a tool to manage church or ministry finances. 2, remembering that we are only stewards of what God gives us to manage. Number 3, we should live within our means and document all receipts and expenses. In other words, to have integrity in our financial management activities. Some notes to be aware of: that we need to be sensitive to cash flow. Many churches have little or no finances, but that's okay. Even with little or no finances, they should still learn some of these principles about managing those finances that they do receive. Emphasize the principles regardless of how much money they receive or manage. Again, we're focused on principles. It's not about the volume. Obviously, the more money you have, the more attention you need to pay to it. But it's also applicable to people with very little cash flow or very little offerings. Finally, make sure they understand the budget process. They will likely have to use it at some point to build a budget for a ministry or a project. Like our other chapters, we begin with a scripture. This one comes from Philippians chapter 4:19, which talks about how God meets our needs. Then there's an opening paragraph that you can read that outlines what we're going to talk about in this chapter. And then the first question might be asking the participants, how many of them have a church budget? That'll just give you some insight as to how they use it and if they are using one today. The first thing we talk about in this chapter is, again, the importance of budgets. And we lay out some of the key reasons why budgets are important. We lay out 6 different reasons. Number 1, acknowledging God as provider. Number 2, acknowledging that we are just stewards of His resources. Number 3, it helps us understand our financial situation. Number 4, it can help us prevent financial problems. Number 5, it helps us establish priorities and goals. And number 6, it communicates what our true ministry needs are. The next section talks about principles of budgeting. And again, here we lay out 6 principles of budgeting. The first and foremost is that we should live within our means. Secondly, that we realistically assess where our income is likely to come from, offerings or donations or whatever for the coming year. To encourage regular giving, which is tithing, preaching on first fruits. Number 4, to monitor and control our expenses. That's one of the big keys for having a budget, is to be able to know where the money is coming and where it is going. Number 5, it helps us to avoid debt if we know what we have coming in and we don't have to borrow money. Hopefully we don't have to. And number 6, it also teaches us how to trust God for what we truly need for our ministry. The next section of this chapter talks about how to establish a budget. And we lay out some steps here that you can go through to prepare a budget. First of all, beginning with looking at your potential income. Then we look at our needs for the church and what might be our potential expenses this year. Then you want to prioritize your expenses to make sure you spend your money on the most important things first. And then you create a budget that matches your prioritized needs with your anticipated income. The last thing you can do is you can create alternate budgets. In other words, what happens if you get more income than you think, or if you get less income? And then you can kind of have an alternative budget that takes that into account, so you're prepared for those eventualities. The last thing in this chapter is the budget, and we have an exercise in there too where you can list some of the income sources and the amount that you have, and then list some items of expenses that you would have to spend from that budget. And you can kind of go through this exercise and prepare a sample budget for your ministry or your church. Thank you for watching this training on budgeting.